Hi guys, and welcome back to today's endgame video. So today we're just going to go over rook versus connected pawns. Now we're going to look at examples where the pawns are pretty far advanced, like you can see here, because if they aren't, if they're like, I don't know, so somewhere here, then it's quite easy to win this position with white. So that's why we're looking at these positions. And in this example, you can see these two pawns are really far advanced, and this is usually just winning for the side with the pawns, because as you can see, if black is on move, he just plays a2, and then you can see that if rook moves, then you just promote to a queen, and if this rook takes the pawn, then you again promote to a queen. So the rook is a lot of times clumsy defending those connected pawns, because one is just going to sacrifice itself for the other to promote. But unfortunately for black, white can draw this game. And I want you to pause the video and think about what should white do to draw this game. Okay, so we can see that black's king is a little bit awkwardly placed here, and we can see the idea of checkmate. So the correct move here for white is king to f5. You can see that if black plays a2 now, this is going to be checkmate. So it's really awesome, and black has to do something. Black has to move the king, and you can see that white really wants to achieve a draw because these two pawns are too strong for the rook. So if black moves, for example, up, you just go up with your king and you just repeat this. And the only way for black to get out of this checkmating threat is to come to this h2 square. And this is exactly what white wants actually. And let's see how this went. Black played king to h5 and they just moved down the board to this h2 square. And when black played king to h2, what do you think white played? Click on the top right corner to suggest which move is correct here for white. Okay, so white has to play king to e3. And what is the point? Again, black can't play a2 because we can see check. You take this pawn with a check, and black has no time to promote this pawn, and white is even going to win this game. So black has to move his king here, and he moved it to g2. Now why didn't he go to g3? The reason is simple, and it's because white can just check the king, and when he moves, I don't know, somewhere, for example, to h2, you go back and it's the same position again. And if he goes, for example, to h4, we can see king to f4, again the threat of the checkmate. And when he goes down the board, now you can see if he plays king to h2, this is even losing for black because of a simple move, rook to b1, and it's a zugzwang. Black can't play here because this is checkmate. And black can't advance the pawn because again this is just winning for white. So that's why black went to this g2 square, but this is still winning for white. White just comes closer with his king because you always want to get closer with your king, because this rook, as you can see, can't handle both of these pawns. So he played king to d3, and now we can see king to f3, and white is just in time. He played king to c3, and now after a2, we can see that there's not just one possible draw. White took here on b2 and this is a draw. He could also play rook to f1 check and then just take this pawn, and it would also be a draw, right? So white showed a very good technique in this game of checkmating threat, and that's why he drew the game. If this king was, for example, I don't know, somewhere here, then this would be an easy win for black because he would just play a2 and then promote to a queen. Okay, so now let's move on to our next example. And again we can see that this black's king is really on a bad place because these two pawns are of course moving up. And white's king is on a really good spot because it supports these two pawns to a promotion square. So this example is actually really cool because we can see an technique from the last video about the rook versus pawn, and it goes like this. If white tries to just sacrifice this a pawn to promote this b pawn, he could play something like b6, right? And when black takes the pawn, b7. And it looks like black can't stop this pawn, and he can't. Because just like we said in our previous video, black can't do anything here. You can see that white is just going to promote on the next move. He can't do anything. The only idea for him is if white is on move and he plays something like king to b5, then black can play rook to a1 and check him from behind and just take the pawn. But here black is on move and the only chance to stop this pawn from promoting is to play rook to a5. And now the thing is, you don't go there because of this, but you go down, and then when you come here, you play king to b2, and now he doesn't have this idea. So I explained this faster because I already talked about this in our previous video. But this move actually doesn't work in this position because black has a in-between move. He can play rook to a5 check first and then take the pawn, and now this is a draw. And that's why white didn't play this, because he of course wanted to win, because those two connected pawns are very strong. So he played king to b6, and we can see that black tried to come closer with the king, with king to d2. And now what should white do? If you're thinking about a7, this is a wrong move actually here. I mean, it looks quite logical, right? To just play king to b7 and promote to a queen. But black's king is going to be pretty close to catching this pawn. So what happens here is black plays king to c3, just getting closer. We can see king to b7 and now king to b4, trying to catch this pawn. And when white plays b6, we can see king to b5. And black is just in time, and this is a draw because white can't do anything if he plays something like this. This is just a draw. You can see that black can play something like king to c5, and white can't advance because of this. It's just a draw. So that's why a7 isn't correct here. But white didn't play a7, he just played king to a7, and this is just winning now because this pawn is just going to promote. As you can see, king to c3, this pawn just goes up and this is over. So here in this example, black used the right method, getting the rook behind these two pawns, and he's attacking the pawn which is more advanced. This is a great thing to do. If we just imagine this position without kings, then white can't play a7 because rook would take it, and white can't play b6 because rook would take this pawn again. And that's why it's the best to attack the far advanced pawn. But in this example, white's king was too active and black's king wasn't active. So that's why he lost the game. But now I want to show you in another example how the player with a rook attacked the more advanced pawn and just won the game. So let's see it. You can see that in this example, if black was on move, he's winning. For example, if white does something stupid, then black would probably play g2 and white would have to defend this promotion square, and then black would play f3, and now black is just winning because on the next move he's just going to play f2, and you can't stop these two pawns. They're just too good for this rook. He can take one, but then white wins actually immediately, wins the rook, because I moved the king to such a silly square, but okay, it's winning anyway. But white is on move in this example, so can he save the game? And if he can, how? Okay, so the correct move here is rook to g6, and the plan is basically, like I said, attacking the more advanced pawn, because neither of this pawn can move now, because this pawn would fall, right? So that's why black needs the support of the king now. And the thing is that white is just too fast. Black can play king to d7 like he did, trying to get closer. But now what do you think white plays? White plays a very good move here, just straight winning. And this is rook to g4. Attacking this pawn, threatening to take it. And you can see that if pawns were here and here, this wasn't possible. Because again, this pawn would advance and then just one of them would promote. But now this is not possible because if this pawn advances, white can take this pawn and just defends the promotion square and wins the game. So this was possible here. Black knew that he's going to lose one pawn and he really wants to draw because this rook here is enough strong for both of these pawns, because white used the right technique, attacking the more advanced pawn. And even without the help of the king, this rook is enough strong. So here black tried to draw the game with only one pawn, and he played pawn to g2. And the point is that now white has to take this pawn, because otherwise black is just going to play f3 and just win the game. So he took it, and now this pawn really needs the support of the king, because otherwise white is just going to win it. So black played king to e6, and now pause the video. How do you win this position? What is the right move? Okay, so rook to f2 is obviously not correct, because black just gets to defend his pawn, and then he's just going to move his king up the board, and this is going to be a draw because your king is really badly placed. So the correct move here is cutting the king. Like we said in our previous video, you want to cut the king from defense of this pawn, and now this is just winning, because if black advances the pawn, you can't play this move, but you can play this move here, attacking the pawn, and black can't defend this pawn, so he has to move it, and this is just winning. And he can't do anything else either here, because if he plays king to here, then you just play rook here, for example, and the moment black advances the pawn, you attack it, and then you chase it, right? So if black just moves his king around here, then you're just going to move your king up the board and then just win the game. It sounds pretty strange that only two pawns can be stronger than a rook, but if they're connected, it's really possible, because it's a really hard task for a lone rook to defend both of the pawns, and it's really the matter how far they're advanced, because if they're closer to the promotion squares, then of course they're going to be more dangerous, and the rook is going to defend the position harder. Now of course the position of the kings is really important in these endgames, because if black has his king somewhere around these pawns, it gives them extra protection, and this king can also attack the rook and just have support of this promotion square. And it's the same for the white's king. If the white's king is closer to these pawns, then he's going to win or draw the position easier. And when you have a rook against these two connected pass pawns, always remember that the best technique to defend these positions is to attack the more advanced pawn, and just try to get your king closer to these two pawns, of course. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, drop a like and share it, and I'll see you in the next video.